All right, shalom, shalom, shalom. First thing and foremost, I want to give all praises, all honor, and all glory unto Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Rahakradash. Secondly, I want to give double honors to my elders and my apostles of Great Millstone, who taught me this truth in righteousness and in sincerity. And third of all, I want to give salutations to the hopeful elect that are out on the highways and the byways teaching and preaching this word in truth and in sincerity. Now this is going to be a part 2. You know, my last lesson was part 1 of me going into the book of Psalms, chapter 35, and I ended off on verse 5. You know, I had to cut it short due to, time's sake. But this is going to be a continuation on my lunch break. And, I'm going to continue to expound through the Spirit. And Lord willing, this is edifying to you brothers and you sisters. So I'm going to briefly read back from verse 1 down to verse 5 where I ended off. Just to, refresh those who didn't watch the first lesson. But, I suggest that you honestly, go and watch that right fast. And then you can come back to this so that this, more, you can get more understanding, being able to be taught the first 5, and hear that spiritual expounding before I continue on. So it reads in verse 1, plead my cause, O Lord Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahweh Shai, with them that strive with me, fight against them that fight against me. Take hold of shield and buckler, and stand up for my help. Right, so strive with those who strive with me. Be with the hopeful elect, all those who believe in your true name, and defend us, help us. It says, fight against them that fight against me. So, rise up against our enemies, the enemies of our own people, so-called blacks, Hispanics, and Native Americans that don't believe, our enemy that is the so-called white man that's completely opposed to us, and the other nations that hate us as well, that have been influenced through the deception of the wicked, which is Esau, Edom, the so-called white man. It says in verse 3, draw out also the spear and stop the way against them that persecute me, and say unto my soul, I am thy salvation. Let them be confounded and put to shame that seek after my soul. Let them be turned back and brought into confusion that devise my hurt. Let them be as chaff before the wind, and let the angel of the Lord Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahweh Shai chase them. Right, so let them be persecuted. Now this is, I'm going to continue on. That was me kind of briefly going over what I went into the last lesson, which was part 1. Now, starting at verse 6, it reads, let their way be dark and slippery. Let the angel of the Lord Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahweh Shai persecute them. And the scriptures tell us that the wicked stumble and they know not what they stumble over, roughly paraphrasing. So they are stumbling because they are not walking that path of light. So they're in darkness. They're blind. They can't see. So they trip over every obstacle that's in their path. And this is ultimately, this prayer is going into, the spirit of the hopeful elect, the spirit of the elect, those who believe in Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahweh Shai in truth and in sincerity, showing that we pray not for those of our people that don't believe, which is the majority of our people, the majority of you so-called blacks, Hispanics, and Native Americans. The majority of you do not believe, so we're not praying for you to, come back. We're not praying for the Lord to have mercy on you. Those who were chosen not to believe and to, be snakes in the grass, to be blasphemers, speaking lies against us, wanting us to be persecuted, and actually putting forth your hand to forward our affliction and to betray us. We're not praying for your salvation. We're praying, as it says in verse 6, that your way be dark and slippery, right? Full of darkness, full of decay, full of sadness and gloom and depression and slippery, because you don't have a solid foundation, you don't have a leg to stand on, as they say. So we're praying that you slip and fall over every obstacle that comes your way, and that you don't stand tall, and that you don't be able to hold your ground, but that you slip and that you fall and not be able to get up, As somebody that's on a slippery floor, they just keep slipping around. They can't stand up straight. Every time it feel like they getting up, they fall back down. That's what we pray for you unbelievers. And we pray that we are of the believing number, the elect, and that we continue to believe unto the end, that we receive mercy. It says, and let the angel of the Lord Yahweh Ba'Shem Yahushai persecute them. Right. So let the angel of the Lord attack them. Let the angel of the Lord expose them. Let the angel of the Lord Yahweh Ba'Shem Yahushai afflict them and destroy them, put them to death, cause them to be brought low and to be humiliated, and for the lies that they were speaking to be exposed, and the truth that we were speaking and we have been speaking up until this point, and that if we are of the elect, we will continue to speak up until the end. Let that truth be revealed before their lies. It says in verse 7, for without cause have they hid for me their net in a pit. Right, so they have hid traps for us without cause. All we're doing is preaching life. We're telling our people that they are the greatest people upon planet Earth, that we were created to be a holy nation, which is separate from all of these other nations, the so-called Arabs, the so-called Japanese, the so-called Chinese, the so-called whites, the so-called, etc. So-called Africans, all of these different nations, we were chosen to be separate from. Us so-called blacks, Hispanics, and Native Americans, from the Brazilians to the Cubans to the Colombians to the Puerto Ricans to the African Americans to the Haitians to the Jamaicans, West Indians, to the Guatemalans, the Uruguayans, all of these different nations that I just named. They are the 12 they make up the 12 tribes of Israel. You so-called Seminole Indians, you so-called Native American Indians, you so-called Venezuelans, you so-called, Salakia. I'm trying to think of a bunch of different ones. El Salvadorians, etc. You are all, you so-called Chileans, you so-called, I believe I said Argentinians, but we are the 12 tribes of Israel. We make up the Israelites. We are not what they called us, which is the names that I just named. Those are just titles they put on us after they enslaved us. But we have been given names from the beginning, being 12 tribes, and also being given individual names by our Lord Yahweh Ba'Shem Yahushai, not what they call us. It said, but that's what we are being persecuted for, and they are laying nets for us to trap us and to, put us to death, put us into prison, from the wicked, the so-called white man, Esau, Edom, and our own people. They are all our family members, they're coming against us, trying to trap us, in our words, trying to deceive and, break our faith and speak poisonous words against us to bring us low. Our people in general doing the same thing for no reason. They're doing that because of what we're preaching, for us telling them the truth and telling them that they've been lied to. It says, which without cause they have digged for my soul. Right. So without cause, we're doing nothing but a righteous work in preaching this gospel, preaching Yahweh Ba'Shem Yahweh Shai, telling our people that they're not supposed to, that they can't eat crab, shrimp, and lobster, that they can't eat pork. Those things not only spiritually defile you, but physically, because the majority of our people are carnal. They only care about the physical. And when it comes to the physical, those things, those foods that I just mentioned, those meats, those animals, they are defiling and harming you physically. They don't benefit you physically. They actually bring diseases, they bring different problems. And that shows that the Lord established this dietary law for our benefit, because he loves us. But our people, they persecute us and they try to trap us and, cast us away, and eventually will try to cast us into prison and cause us to be put to death for us telling them the truth and trying to give them life, through Yahweh Ba'Shem Yahweh Shai. It says in verse 8, let destruction come upon him that at unawares. Right, so let him not even be aware when the destruction comes. And that's how it's going to hit these people. The majority of our people, so-called blacks, Hispanics, and Native Americans, are going to be lollygagging, are going to be, occupied in everything that's of this world, from the social media, when it comes to YouTube, when it comes to TikTok, when it comes to the sports, when it comes to the music, when it comes to jobs and the workforce, all of your hobbies, all of these different things that we can get lost in and invest our time and energy into, trying to make it in this life, trying to leave a mark in this world, as they say. Our people are going to be caught up in that. So this judgment, this destruction is going to come unawares to them. They're not going to be aware of it when it happens, and it's going to catch them off guard. It says, and let his net that he hath hid catch himself. Right, because they hide nets for us, trying to call us liars, trying to call us wicked, trying to call us evil. But those same lies that they're speaking against us is going to be found to be true in them, regarding them, telling us that we go die, telling us that, God is go judge us because us preaching the 100% truth, which they speaking about their gods, the gods that they believe, which are idols. But all of those words are going to come back and bite them in their behind from the true and living God, because we were preaching the truth and they were speaking lies. These false prophets as well, they are preaching lies. IUIC, Watchmen for Israel, ISUPK, all of these different camps that preach that they are the Hebrew Israelites, and they know who they are, and they preaching like they got the 100, like they got the gospel, they got the truth, because a lot of these camps don't even believe that you can even have the 100% truth, which you can, because the Lord revealed it, but they don't even preach that. So I ain't even gonna say 100% truth, but these camps that's preaching like they have the truth and they know the will of the Father, they know the true doctrine, and they're leading these people, they're leading the flock astray. The majority of our people, they are going to be caught up because they've spoken lies and laid traps for us. But all of those things are going to come back to them, and it's going to catch their flock as well that's following them and that's believing them, which is the majority, because the majority of our people are going to be destroyed. 2/3 are going to perish, and 144,000, right along with 1/3, are going to be the number that's saved, which is a small few out of 2/3. But it says, and let his net that he hath hid catch himself into that very destruction, let him fall. Right, so let him fall into that destruction that he's praying that we fall into. You know, whatever these wicked Israelites that's plotting against us, that's, you know, speaking evil words against us and hoping that we fall, let them fall into that. You know, and our primary enemy, the so-called white man, Esau Edom, you know, he's meditating all manners of destructions and wicked imaginations against us, and he's going to fall into all of them, you know, and it's going to be 500 times worse, 700 times worse, you know, than he imagined it for us. He's going to be enslaved in the kingdom, and he's going to perish at the end of 1,000 years, and he's going to have a horrible time, you know. So, and even before that, he is going to suffer, right along with all those who follow him. His whole kingdom is going to vanish before his face. It's going to be turned into vapor, into smoke, which is America. This place is going to be nuked beyond comprehension. But it says in verse 9, and my soul shall be joyful in the Lord Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahushai. It shall rejoice in his salvation. Right, because we're going to see the destruction of our enemies. We're going to see the lies that they spoke against us be shown to be lies. And we're going to see the truth that we were speaking and that we are speaking to be shown to be the truth. And we're going to see us being saved if we are of that number, Lord willing. You know, we're going to see us being saved, and we are going to see those who spoke against us, the women included, you know, the women that betrayed us, that didn't stick around, that couldn't get with the program, that didn't believe in the vision, they couldn't see it. They're going to also see this salvation, you know, that's going to be given to us, and they are going to be destroyed, and we're going to see that. We're going to see the women trying to come back, and us having the option to, you know, leave them in the dust, you know, and them understanding that a prophet was among them. And the people that we tried to preach the truth to in general, when it comes to these men, you know, we're going to see them seeking the truth, trying to come and be saved and, you know, get some guidance, you know, get some form of shelter and safety, and they are going to be turned away. They are going to be judged. The Lord is going to give certain men power to judge them and put them to death, men, women, and children. So it's not going to be a pretty day for them. They are going to have nothing but destruction, and we are going to rejoice because we are going to be saved out of all of the affliction that's soon to come, leading up to the nuclear fire that's going to rain. We're going to be saved out of everything, even though we're going to be tried, you know. It says, and my soul shall be joyful in the Lord Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahushua. That's why it says in verse 10, all my bones shall say. That's going into the foundation of you, you know, your inner being, you know. It says, all my bones shall say, Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahushua, who is like unto thee, who delivereth the poor from him that is too strong for him. Right, we are in this system. We are in this society where we were enslaved and stripped from everything that we knew, everything that we had, all of our substance, all of our military might, everything that, you know, made us sovereign, you know, everything that, you know, exalted us, and we were brought low, reclassified, put new names on us, separated from tribe to tribe. You know, we are 12 tribes, but now we look at each other like we different ethnicities, we different races of people. A Mexican and a so-called black man, a so-called Mexican and a so-called black man, they are brothers. You know, they are of the same nation, just different tribes, you know. But we have been destroyed when it comes to the knowing of those things. We have been brought low. we have been made poor, as it says, who is like unto thee, which delivereth the poor from him that is too strong for him. Right. It says, yea, the poor and the needy from him that spoileth him. Right. Who spoileth is going in to destroy him. You know, the poor and the needy. We are poor in the flesh. You know, we have been made poor. That's why we living in the slums, the ghettos. That's why we got nothing but gas stations and little family dollars and stuff in our neighborhoods with nothing but poison and artificial foods, and all of the, you know, whole food stores and the farmers markets and everything is in higher class areas with more so-called white people, or, you know, more nations that are not of the 12 tribes of Israel. You know, we are targeted and given poison. You know, our people are locked up, you know, at a higher rate. They're hit with more severe punishment in the justice system. You know, our people are afflicted and targeted in so many different ways, you know, on social media and in the entertainment industry. We're portrayed in horrible lights. We're portrayed as being poor, you know, as being needy. And when it comes to what we need the most, which is Yahweh B'Shem Yahushai, the majority of our people don't have it. It's a small few that has received Yahweh B'Shem Yahushai and this truth, the true names, the true doctrine. So our people are needy for a true and living power, which is their power, Yahweh B'Shem Yahushai. And that's ultimately the reason why they are so broken, why they are so traumatized, why they are so hopeless in this society, why they hate each other, you know, why they do all of these things that they do, why they're seeking gods to serve, because they naturally know that they're supposed to serve a God, but they're not going to the true and living power. They're needy. You know, they're desiring continuously. That's why these women can never be satisfied. You know, all of these things stem from them needing the truth. But 2/3 have been chosen not to get it and to be destroyed for not having it and not believing, and ultimately being reborn in the kingdom of heaven perfect, you know, where they will live in joy, where they will live with peace, with safety. But here they are going to have to die, you know, and they are going to have to taste of the fire that's going to burn everything that the so-called white man has built, you know, that he spoiled us to get and made us poor and needy to inquire, you know. But it says in verse 11, false witnesses did rise up. They laid to my charge things that I knew not. Right, all of these false prophets out here rising up against us, calling themselves Hebrew Israelites, saying that they have the true doctrine and that we're speaking lies, forming all manners of wicked rumors about us, saying that we did this, we did that, we preached this, we preached that, you know, mixing and throwing dirt on our words, you know, mixing up the doctrine that we preach and saying that we saying something that we're not. And even when they speak about things that we are saying, they speak about it like it's wicked when it's righteous. You know, they try to say that certain things that the Lord said in the scriptures are not right. You know, speaking against Paul, all manners of wicked things that these false prophets rise up and do. You know, these false witnesses. And when it comes to the so-called white man, you know, he has risen up against us and called us terrorists, called us you know what I'm about to say, the anti-S, you know, saying all of these things against us. We're extremists, you know, that we're conspiracy theorists, that we're harming the minds of people. These are things that's going to be magnified as we get closer to the return of Yahweh Shai. These lies, these false witnesses are going to continue to rise up. Them, you know, rising up and saying that they witnessed us doing evil, that they witnessed us with guile in our mouth, with deceit in our mouth, with evil words in our mouth, when that's not what's in our mouth. What's in our mouth is the bread of life, which is this word of Yahweh Shai, being him in word form. Yahweh Shai said, "Lo, I come in the volume of the book. It is written of me." So this is so-called Jesus Christ, which his true name is Yahweh Shai, written in book form. And if you believe in Yahweh Shai, you will believe in this whole book, because it wasn't a part of Yahweh Shai. It's not a part of Yahweh Shai that's defiled, that's deception, that's impure. It says, "They rewarded me evil for good, to the spoiling of my soul." Right. So I gave them good words of life, words that would heal them, that would help them change their ways for the better. But they rewarded me evil by speaking against it, by trying to mix what I said and, tell the world that I told them something that was evil, trying to tell us and rise up against us for us telling them to stop eating certain things that's unclean. All of these things that we do, which are good, they reward us, evil for it. Trying to demonize the Hebrew Israelites as a whole, because we got false camps out here, false prophets out here. And even when it comes to the true doctrine, you got people that can't get down with none of the camps, let alone the 100% truth, because they just are rebellious. They might hear one doctrine and classify, every Israelite as the same. It's all manners of false witnesses out here rising up against us and speaking lies, trying to say that Israelites as a whole do this or do that, say this and say that, when we don't do none of those things. We are in the true and pure light, even if it's other Israelites out here that's not. You have a small few that was chosen to be different, and there's a clear difference that's going to be made manifest fully in the kingdom, not in the kingdom, before the kingdom is going to be made manifest when all hell breaks loose, and in the kingdom of heaven is going to be a clear difference, because we are going to be the exalted nation. We are going to be the rulers of the world. We are going to be the light of the world, completely perfect and righteous. No slipping, no falling. And before the kingdom, we are going to be risen up and exalted and proven to be right, given spiritual power, given light in the darkness that's going to be fully around us, destroying everybody. These left-handed angels, these death angels are going to be consuming these people, terrorizing them, having them go through all forms of pain and suffering. But the elect, they are going to be risen up in the truth that they were speaking, the warnings that they were giving these people. Those same warnings are going to be made manifest and consume these people that neglected the warnings, So Lord willing, we of that number that takes heed, and that continues in the things that we have been taught through Yahweh Ba'ashim Yahweh Shai by our elders and our apostles on down. But as that timer, you saw that timer go off. That was the end of my break. So I'm going to have to cut it off here. And Lord willing, I'm going to come back with a part 3. But until next time, Shalom. Lord willing, you is edified.
Look, when Babylon is destroyed on fire, that's going to shake up the whole world. We're going to be beamed up. The hopeful elect, if we're the elect, we're going to be beamed up. And we're going to see this destruction pursuant to Psalms 91 and other scriptures. And we're going to hover over Babylon, and we're going to see the destruction. We're going to get a ringside seat to the war of Armageddon. And then we're going to come back down. When we come back down to the earth, we taking everything over. The saints of the Most High shall take the kingdom. When we come down now, we can say this. Them people, when we come back to earth, as the X-Men Marvel comic DC comic men, the Thanoses and the Kal-Els and so forth, when we come back down with superhuman extraterrestrial celestial bodies, they may attempt to fight us like we're aliens. And we're gonna kick much ass, and we're gonna have fun kicking their ass. I'm talking about the people around the world. That's what it's meant by the saints of the Most High, the Israelites, starting with the men, will take the kingdom.